Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our joint dinner with the Library Commission. I'm hoping you all had a chance to get something to eat here. Okay, good. We were cooking all afternoon, so we hope you liked it. We hope you liked it. No, thank you to our staff for providing the good food for this meeting this evening. So we're going to start by going around the room and introducing ourselves. I'm Lisa Gilmore, Mayor, Santa Clara.
Trace O'Neill, council member.
Sorry, Karen just took a mouthful. Could you all speak in the microphones? Because thank you, sorry about that.
Hillary Keith, City Librarian.
Lee Brofman, not Leon Brofman. I'm co-chair of the Board of Trustees.
Steve Ricosa, Board of Library Trustees.
Jan Hintermeister, member of Board of Trustees.
Debbie Triforos, member of the Board of Trustees.
Raj Chahal, council member.
Kathy Watanabe, council member and former Library Board of Trustee.
Debbie Davis, council member.
Pat Mahan, vice mayor.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us this evening. So I see that you have a PowerPoint presentation for us. Lee, did you say you're co-chair of the committee? Okay.
Yes, I'm co-chair, and I will start the. We were going to do a PowerPoint, but we thought that was too formal, so I believe you've been handed some documents.
We have our handouts here.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And they will be talked to specifically.
Very good. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. First of all, as Mr. Samidian said, never stop saying thank you. So I want to thank the mayor and city council for their continued support of our libraries. And I get to add the third S on the libraries. Also, I would like to invite the new council people to come and take tours of our libraries. I know Mr. Shahal has been in the library a lot, but I'm not sure he's ever gone behind the scenes. And Karen, you're all welcome. And also, our seasoned members are welcome to come anytime also. And we are here this evening to talk about our library trustees' vision for our libraries for the future. This includes the need for increased facilities and services. And when you think of services, we must think of staff. I want to take this opportunity to talk about the unacknowledged staff at our libraries. And the first person I'm going to say, she's not that unacknowledged, but it is Hillary Keith, who's here tonight. She's our city librarian. Paul Sims is our assistant city librarian. And then I want to talk about the staff who make our librarians look good. First of all, I'm starting with Nan Choi, acting youth services coordinator, and she is also her staff. Shanti Baskaram, who runs the Family Literacy and Read Santa Clara, and her staff. Mary Boyle, local history and genealogy, and her mountain of volunteers. Rachel Schmidt from Adult Services, Yulon Chow, Technical Services, Ben Blight, Circulation, and also the Customer Service Desk and his staff, John Schlosser from Technology, Cheryl Lee from Northside Library and her staff, Justin Westerlane, Acting Manager of the Mission Branch, and his staff. And, of course, Cody Christensen, Mr. Bookmobile.
Oh, he's great.
And even though she's not a staff as such, I want to recognize Tracy Wengrove, Executive Director of the Foundation and Friends, and her staff, these are the people who are responsible for making our amazing programs at our libraries. So thank you. And I believe Debbie is going to read a letter or a note from our chair, David Kao, who was unfortunately unable to attend.
Great. Debbie.
Mayor and Council, greetings and happy Lunar New Year. I apologize for not being here in person tonight, but I am with family at the moment. We're all excited about how things have been going at the library. For this dinner, we wanted to circle back on a topic that we mentioned briefly at the last joint dinner. Specifically, we'd like to see the library represented in the city's general plan in a more substantive way. Mr. Crabtree was gracious enough to talk with us about the process and possibilities to make this happen. I'd like to see more specific language around the long-term goals for the library as a key social infrastructure that Santa Clara wants to maintain and invest in. Some suggested goals: library as gathering places, so maintaining the interior and surrounding area with seating, art, and small spaces for mobile vendors. A place for everyone to gain access to learn and use new technology. Maintain safe and up-to-date structures. Equal access to everyone in the city via virtual branch, online materials, bookmobile, and new branches as needed. Another option we learned about was to have the general plan reference a library master plan that Hillary can maintain separately. The other venue we wanted to pursue concurrently was the idea of impact fees for libraries. As we looked into new development and the fees being levied, we were surprised to find that libraries did not have specific monies associated with them. Jan will go into more detail around our thoughts and suggestions for the impact fees and the research behind the suggestions. Again, apologies for not being there in person for the first joint dinner with the new council members. Thank you for always supporting our libraries. David.
Thank you for reading that, Debbie.
Ms. Steve Ricosa, I believe you have a few words.
Yeah, I think this was very lucky. It's most fortuitous that we're meeting now. I mean, we just went to the goal-setting session, which we want to talk about, and a lot of us supported the library over the weekend at the Library Palooza, so it's really great, which meant I've seen a lot of you a lot in the last couple of days, so yeah, it's very neat. First of all, I wanted to say, and you know, that several of us attended the goal-setting session in person, but that really reflects the fact that we have a partnership with the senior staff, with Hillary and Paul, and with the Board of Library Trustees and the Foundation and Friends. I was found that I was given the opportunity to be the liaison to the Library and Friends and found out I'm a full-fledged member of that board, which means I've got to write checks for that board
right.
too.
Get your dues in, get your money
yes,
in.
And she knows.
Kathy knows.
So, and Raj knows, so that was news. So some of the key things that we heard from you, the members of the City Council, last Friday, and this is not all of them, but the big things was, and here's something that was already mentioned in David's letters, how do we address the needs for the library of an increased population? And Jan is going to cover that in his PowerPoint presentation. And how do developers participate? In other words, how do they fund our additional library needs? Because it's really like, well, of course you're going to fund schools, parks, and all those things. Well, let's make sure that we have libraries on that list. And I think that's one of the major messages that we want to carry, is obviously to advocate for enough library resources in the city as it grows. We've heard that we want, and of course agree with expanded hours, particularly at the branches. The use of outside spaces, Ms. Davis, you had mentioned that. And that actually goes in with this whole thing of placemaking, which we're starting to think those really go together. And the community room reservation system, I think, Ms. Hardy, I think you mentioned that. And these are things we're working on. So in terms of the highest priority for expanded hours, I think that at least us and most people believe, right, getting Northside open on Sundays is really an important thing. And I had first thought, we discussed it yesterday, well, does it have to do with Levi Stadium being there on Sundays and it being an issue? But there's really no issue at all with getting to Rivermark. So that's the highest priority thing. Whether it needs net additional resources, that's something we're discussing. And then, of course, we'd want to look at increased at the Mission Branch also. And then outside spaces, that's really an interesting thing. I think right now, one of the first things about how do we use the outside land, well, of course, everything is next to parks, and as part of the grand design, that's great, but I think there's the new play structures that are out there, which I think are portable, that can be brought in and taken out, so we can use the outside kind of like on demand, and it's not like things will be stuck out there in the rain and the bad weather. So that's, I guess they're on their way. It's already been ordered, and it's very close to deployment. And I remember we had, it was actually at the library, we met with along with other commissions, the placemaking consultants. So we're all very interested in seeing how we can participate more in that and using all that. The other interesting thing happened that Anna Vargas Smith, who's on the Landmarks Commission, contacted us and wanted to talk to us. Well, in this particular case, it was my Kiwanis Club in Santa Clara, and presented the Reclaiming Our Downtown. And I think as everybody knows that the Mission Library refit is really the first step. It's only within one block of what's the official grid of downtown. So we hope that us as the Library Board of Trustees can also participate in reclaiming our downtown. And of course, all these things we just mentioned really means we need to work more closely with Park and Rec, and I think that was even mentioned as one of the priorities or ideas at the goal setting, is that we really need to partner up. So it was kind of ironic that Hillary and Jim were sitting next to each other at the Friday session, so maybe that wasn't a coincidence. And the last idea to talk about is that we are actively working, and city staff is working on the redesign of the liquid space software, which is there to reserve the rooms. And we understand the issue of, can we make it more like and more transparent and seamless with the reservation system for Parks and Rec. So that remains to be seen. There may be some refitting of the software and things like that. So again, we'll be working with Park and Rec to get that go. So we have some pretty interesting ideas and exciting things to work on. And so now Jan will focus in on the issues of library services and increase of housing.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So for this, we'll go to this little PowerPoint presentation here. There's really just a few slides, so it's not a very lengthy thing. Okay. But in terms of trying to provide some rationale for long-term planning for library services, we recognize that housing is kind of an issue that we're all concerned about, and there's a tremendous amount of housing in the pipeline. And I think most of us recognize that we really do need substantial housing in Santa Clara. But we also need to maintain our infrastructure. And a lot of that infrastructure maintenance is kind of covered already through different processes for like utilities or police and fire. But what we want to make sure is that libraries are considered as a valued asset. And I kind of know we're kind of preaching to the choir here because of the great support that the council has shown for libraries. But in kind of aligning with the data-driven message that I think we've all heard, and I know we heard repeated several times at the strategic planning session last week, we want to look at a little data and kind of see where that leads us. So I'm just turning the page here, looking at the expected population increase. So what we did was we looked at the planning page, which shows all the different housing developments that are in progress. And that page shows things that are under construction, that are approved or are pending review. But they've all been projects that have been formally proposed. So it doesn't really include a lot of the site specific plans are not included there. Just basic projects. So what I did very briefly, and if you look at the last sheet, you'll just see my work.
That's good work on the last sheet there. Wow.
Yeah, it's just a long list of all the projects on the planning page, identifying how many housing units are there, and then using the 2.73 residents per unit that was used in the East Tasman. And I'm sure that kind of varies from project to project. There's a little bit of senior housing, which is probably less. Some multifamily that are more. But basically, if you kind of tally everything up, we wind up with 20,000 additional dwelling units. And that's really just the stuff that's in the pipeline. Maybe some of those projects don't happen, but there's probably a lot more that are going to be coming out of specific plans than this. But we'll just use 20,000 as a starting point. Using that 2.73 residents per unit, we come up with approximately 54,000 new residents. Now, I don't know what the time scale is, because when you look at the planning page, a lot of those are under construction and will be coming online in 2019 or 2020, but then others are maybe many years out. And for a lot of the larger projects, there's, I think, more uncertainty as to exactly when that will happen. But the result of that is, a 43% increase in population, just in the housing that we know about. As a reference point, that's very close to the amount of people we added from the mid-1960s till now. So that's a tremendous number of people that are being added to the city. So looking at current library services, there's just a chart that shows the square footage and the items for each of our libraries. So we wind up having about, right now, 102,000 square feet of floor space in our 3 libraries. But if you scale the new population by our sort of current quality of service, and by quality of service, I'm using a number of 0.85 square feet per resident. So just looking at floor space per resident as a way to quantify quality of service, library services to the population. If you just take that 0.85 square feet per resident and multiply it by the number of new residents that are from the housing in the pipeline, that scales up to 45,800 square feet. 45,800 square feet. Our current Northside Library is about 15,000 square feet. So when you look at that population scaled to like a required square footage to maintain current level of service, that's equivalent to 3 Northside libraries. So that's not low growth. I mean, that is like a lot. Now, again, as I said, that's going to happen over a number of years, but a lot of that is happening right now. There's a lot of stuff under construction. There'll be people moving in the next couple of years.
In our lifetime. It's happening in our lifetime.
It is.
Yes.
It's happening now. To translate that a little bit into dollars, and again, there's a lot of this is sort of back of the envelope calculations, so there's certainly room for refinement. But one of the current major libraries that's under construction, it may be complete in Hayward, they were using about $1,000 per square foot as kind of like building costs, right? So if you take our 46,000 square feet that are required in new library space, that translates directly to $46 million. So to account just for the new population that we're adding with the housing in the pipeline, we're looking at capital construction costs potentially over the next several years of $46 million. And of course, to service these new residents, our operational costs annual are also going to increase quite a bit. We have a number that we've used for the average operating income per capita, which is $82.47. So again, scaling that by the number of new residents, we project that if all this housing happens, that we'd be increasing our operating budget by about $4.4 million per year. Our current annual operating budget is, at least the money provided by the city to the library system, is $10.4 million. So again, that's about a 40% increase. So looking at the data, the housing that's in the pipeline, there's substantial revenue requirements that are going to be needed to maintain library services to the tune of like $46 million in capital expenditures just for building structures, and probably a 40% increase in the operations budget. Now, I don't know exactly where that money comes from, and I'm sure there's things we can talk about because a lot of our library is now focused on community service, programming, so there's the potential for doing some innovative things to handle parks and rec requirements and library requirements. But still, there's going to be a demand for a lot of new space that's going to be quite expensive. So how do we go about funding that? I'm not an expert in that area, but I've heard, even at our strategic planning session, I heard parcel taxes, potential bond issues, mitigation fees of some kind. Parks Department uses. But the purpose of this was just to provide at least some back-of-the-envelope calculations to kind of identify, you know, approximately how much money we might be talking about over the next 10 years to maintain our existing level of service so that we can have a library system that continues to be really the, you know, the pride of Santa Clara and the envy of a lot of our neighboring cities.
Debbie, I have 2 questions also for you.
You want to go first?
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for this, and thank you for the back of the envelope sort of thing. So one of the things that I heard when Debbie was reading the other co-chair's letter was talking about virtual branches at libraries, like a virtual branch. So in all the discussions you've had and the resources you have with the Library Association through all the people that you talk to, what is the future of libraries? Is it a lot of it brick and mortar? Is it the virtual? Is it a combination of both? I'm just curious about that, what you know about that. And then the second thing is you talk about a potential library impact fee. Do you have examples from other municipalities that have something like that? Or is that a separate fee? Is it included with like library arts and parks or, you know, those kinds of things? I'd be interested to see what you had there because, again, we were talking about some kind of infrastructure, you know, tax or something. Who knows what we do? We're still exploring the revenue options for the next election. But regarding the library impact fees and the future of libraries, is it all brick and mortar or is it a combination of that and virtual? So I was just curious what you knew about that.
Can I jump in here? So I don't know how many of you have been over to Mitchell Park in Palo Alto. It is a park. It is a Parks and Recreation Center, and it is a library. That's, I think, what I kind of see as the future is it's not a single space. And I know many municipalities have brought in more bookmobiles and other things, but I truly think the future is in shared space.
I like the bookmobile. What's old is new again, right?
Yes, but it's not very big, you know. But as far as space goes, sharing it with Parks and Rec, this room could be used for a program for the library, then it can turn around and be used as a program for the community center, so.
Yeah, well, questions like that too, I would really often defer that to our city librarian. But, you know, from my point of view, I mean, we are already kind of with a combination of virtual and physical space. And I know our library system continues to tinker with kind of the right mix of physical books versus virtual soft copy books and try different services. The interesting thing I found out being on the commission is actually that those virtual things doesn't mean cheaper. I mean, with licensing fees and everything else, you'd think there'd be like this huge money savings. That turns out kind of not to be the case. But it'd be interesting to look at the last few years, you know, whether our virtual book usage versus hard copy book usage mix has really changed very much.
Oh, no, that's okay. You can.
Just kind of addressing that one.
This
Oh,
is
thank you
your
for that.
hour.
Well, it's less than an hour, but
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
We only have about 20 minutes left
Oh my
because we
gosh.
have to set up the room for the next meeting.
I know, we just get you in, get you out.
Question?
Question. So I heard that Key Point Credit Union was taking over a program, they were paying for it? Was that, I heard that at the
Paying for-
Lapapalooza?
All right,
They subsidized it, did they cover the whole subsidy or no?
no, they, every year for the last, I believe, 5 years, have given $15,000 toward summer reading. The additional monies were given by, so that is always a given. That is not part of the Library Palooza. But because 2 of the members of the Key Point were there, and because Keith has been on their board a long time, they put in some more money toward just the
Oh.
Library Palooza.
Okay.
But
so-
yeah, they only give us $15,000. The foundation comes up with more money for summer reading. There are other entities that give money, Rotary, Mission City. So it all comes together, but they do not fund Key Point does not fund the entire amount, no.
Okay, because when you were thinking about funding sources, if you could get someone to just cover a program or programs and kind of own that a little bit, and that might help out with some funding. But the other thing that the millennials are now getting back into the hardcover books instead of the reading online. So now they want to hold the book. They're about experience, and I'm thinking, okay. But when I brought up in the study sessions, the pop-up availability back behind that library are tremendous. I mean, even if we did something on a regular basis and kind of like got everybody a little bit more engaged, maybe they might help us with, more fundraising or selling books or things of that nature, because I know it's going to be really hard to fund a lot of things. And to your point, we knew this was coming down the pike. Every time we throw up a building, we sit up there and go, core services, and you're one of them. And also the fact that some people actually love the bookmobile coming to them. So it's like, we're going to have 5 of them in town, but we might almost need 5 bookmobiles to service the amount of people you just gave us numbers for. And it's like one of those things. And I thought maybe with a new development with mixed use, they would take a space and give to the library and have like an in and out check-in kind of a thing. If they weren't using it all the time, shared space. What can you give for us? If there's a coffee shop, or, get in, partner with a Starbucks and say, we want this section of your building here for books and checkout or whatever, but we maintain it. But I don't know. I'm kind of with you. It's like we have to think out of the box at all times and what is going to be the experience. But I know that we're land small when it comes to how much Comic-Con. How many do we have this year?
8,000.
Comic-Con?
How many people? 8,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people to get in that area. So I think we have to figure out how to get into the park or expand out in bookmobiles and or retail partnerships with new developers. So those are just my ideas.
I wanted to return to one of the first questions, Sue, you asked about whether we knew of any examples of and
Huntington Beach. I mean,
yeah, that's the one I was trying to think of, Huntington Beach. I mean, so there are some examples, and I think we looked at Huntington Beach's rationale, but I don't think. I mean, I haven't really studied that. I don't know.
They've been very successful with their mitigation fees, and I got a copy of their agreement, and it seems to work for them, and they have a steady stream of funding. And there's several other, I think Sacramento.
Well, but Sacramento, I looked into. Unfortunately, they do have fees, but they're too little to really make a significant difference. But there was another town or city up here north. You gave us a list of the cities that did it, and we could supply that.
I'm just questioning if we add a fee, like a library fee or whatever we call it, there's a process we have to go through before we add a fee. I don't think do we have to do a fee study? Even if we want to add it onto our fee schedule for June, don't we have to,
We need to do a nexus study.
a nexus study? So we may want to look at that with those types of examples. So you have to start a nexus study to get the fee, because we were looking at the art, even with the art fee that we were talking about and the other fees. Maybe I'm wondering if we could do them all together. Art, libraries, whatever. Quality of, core service, life and whatever you want to call it, something fabulous. Yes, okay.
Sounds good to me.
Yes. Kathy?
But I think one of the other things that David pointed out, if we were put in the general plan with something more specific than that one sentence that doesn't have anything substantive associated with it, it's sort of like libraries will be added as needed or something, and that's the extent of it. So it'd be nice if there was a part of the plan for the overall city.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Doing a great job, as always.
Award-winning commission, I forgot to say.
That's right, the award-winning commission.
Please, I apologize for
We
the
didn't mention
introduction.
tonight again. We heard it, we didn't re-mention it.
Oh,
Yep.
so sorry.
I'm just constantly impressed and amazed at the work that you've undertaken since I was on the Board of Trustees. And I mean, it seems like every group does a great job, but you've definitely, you're setting the bar really high. So, because I remember we used to struggle, you know, what are library trustees supposed to do? But you're definitely setting a wonderful example. So thank you for that. Totally hear what you're saying, you know, about, you know, the expansion of the libraries and the concern as we grow as a city, and out on the north side basically is where that a lot of that growth is going to occur. And I know the north side has been impacted really by a lot of the growth in North San Jose, which didn't put in core services, and they are going to continue to grow. So I don't know if there's some way that we can collaborate with North San Jose in terms of putting in some kind of a library, especially since, you know, we're putting in we're working with the school district in putting in a new school campus up there, but. It definitely, we need to collaborate on some kind of a resolution there, because North San Jose really has had an impact on the North Side Library. The other thing with the plan for City Place and the park, the dedication of land back to the city, the 35 acres, that would be a wonderful opportunity to explore, you know, expansion of a library there as well, especially, you know, shared space, what Lee was talking about in terms of shared space. The Northside Libraries, I remember correctly, was about 1.5 acres, 1.5 acres of land, and I mean, if you think about, you know, you need 3 new libraries to accommodate the growth, you know, you're talking of about 4.5 acres, 5 acres of land, and so. You know, I think we could find that kind of land to put in that what we need. But at the same time, too, with these new developments in the north side, Tasman East, I know they've got some space that they're talking about, community space, you know, how to utilize it. Lawrence Station was talking about a possible library there as well. They're going to have a community center that could possibly be, you know, used for a branch or, but I think there are definitely, you know, we need to leverage those opportunities in terms of, you know, the benefits for the community. And I think there's a lot of good possibilities out there, and there's definitely a lot of need. So, and with everything you're doing, I think you're definitely the folks that can help us get these goals accomplished.
Mayor? Oh, Mayor?
Yeah, just go ahead.
I had a couple of questions. Have you ever looked at automated retrieval systems, because it saves a lot of space? Santa Clara University, when they redid their library, they took all their book stacks and you put them in this conveyor belt thing, and you just press in a button and the book comes to you, and it just compacted so much space to house all those volumes.
Sonoma has that, and
Yeah.
I believe
And it's a
Stanford. But
great
I don't know if you know how much that costs.
But it's an investment in space. I mean, you're either going to build more buildings or you're going to do something to maximize the space in your existing buildings. Another question is, have we looked at working with the school districts? You know, all the schools have libraries. I mean, if we just picked out the larger schools, of high schools or something, to have a joint public school library that would, you know, that people could just go to the school library and check out materials as though they're in the city. And then thirdly, what have we done with the University of Santa Clara? Because their libraries are open to the public. And do we host any events, or could we host some events to make the public aware of that fact? Because they are beautiful libraries, and the law library is building a new one, and they are available to the public. But I don't think a lot of people realize that. And how do we showcase that?
I've kind of often wondered this about Santa Clara myself, because I go to like the Dissay library occasionally, but there really should be more interaction between.
Patty, I would just like to say one thing about partnering with the school district. The other things I have seen people try to do, partnering with the school district, has not always worked. They don't allow general public in during school hours, and they don't necessarily have the equipment that we do for retrieving and checking in books. So it would probably be a major investment, and the school district has its own issues.
Yeah, I can tell you that that was a discussion between Calajon and the community, and it didn't work. Yeah.
Raj?
So first of all, thank you very much for coming and as an advocate for library, right? So many people sitting on this table who have done great job for getting the North Side Library open, and that was such a good moment as such. And some of the good things about our library system, like the partnership library with the Friends and Foundation, so good a partnership. Like they are in a very cohesive partnership, and they work hand in hand to support the programs which our library cannot support. And that's what the libraries are evolving to down the line. It's not only about the books, basically. It's about how we bring together the whole community for different events. And so proud of, especially the North Side Library, like so proud of the number of events they're holding on that library. Fabulous. Like I think as award-winning commission, that should be award-winning library for us over here. And kudos to Jen for giving a very quantitative figures to support the cause for opening more libraries. So a very good logic, and you came up with quite numbers, and that was very impressive to come up with numbers. And yes, in addition to looking at opportunities like collaborating with school, collaborating with SCU, as Vice Mayor Mehan said, we can do a lot of this thing, and we can look at different options and, down the line. And libraries are evolving. You never know within the next 2, 3, 5 years what will be the next feature of libraries will be. But there will always be a shared space, placemaking places down the line. And so rest assured you have full support from me and hopefully from every council member to make sure our libraries do well and do a great job in the future.
Thank you for your kind words. And we want to thank you for dinner. I know it is time for you to put the room in order because you have a meeting.
Councilmember O'Neill has just a couple of statements.
Okay.
And then I'm so sorry, we're going to have to wrap up.
Okay, so in terms of the funding questions and some of the issues that came up, some years ago, I brought up the idea, and it wasn't very popular, but I think it is something to consider, particularly in light of the comments about the use of the library by residents from North San Jose. I think that there have been studies that have shown that a fairly large number of the people who come to the libraries in Santa Clara aren't Santa Clara residents. And so, one thought would be, and it may sound distasteful, is either to have a fee for adults who use the library that aren't Santa Clara residents or don't work in Santa Clara, or to do some collecting of data on people who come to the library, and then we take it to San Jose or whatever and say, hey, we still have an issue with you on our North San Jose agreement, and and part of that whole lawsuit was the impact on city facilities, and so, ante up.
I do want to mention that Sunnyvale is going to build a library somewhere, and it might actually be north of Bayshore, but I haven't heard what's happening with it, but it is a potential, which would help a little bit.
Hopefully close to our borders, right?
Yes. It would be on the other side of Lawrence, yes.
Where is it? Lakewood Village? That's close, yeah. Hope they do a good job. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for everything you do. You're a very active and very effective commission. You really get a lot of things done, which is why you were recognized and received those awards for the outstanding commission that you are. So keep up the good work. We really need a lot of work helping plan for the future. Thanks, Jan, for putting together the number of units. We all know we talk about them all the time, but to see the actual number that, I know other cities criticize us for not getting a lot of residential, but we actually have a lot in the pipeline. But also, I would like to see more bookmobile karaoke, and I'd love to see the commission in a bookmobile karaoke. I would really love to see the commission
Because you can
special request, because I think that is just fabulous. So whatever your final comments.
I have heard that Deanna Santana wants to do a carpool, not carpool, bookmobile karaoke. I'm sure that Hillary's going to work that out.
Commission, you can be the background singers to the city manager. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for everything you do. Thanks. Now we have to set up the room. Yes, Steve?
Well, no, I thought we were going to get away scot-free, and then we get stuck with this karaoke
No,
thing at the end, you know? I thought we were going to be...
You can practice now. The lobby's open. Thank you.